G3 Assistance through Virginia's community colleges is your pathway to a new future, helping those who qualify pay for school and train for the right career, right where you are, right now. Learn more at vccs.edu/G3.
This is a CBC podcast.
Picking up on a story that we followed earlier this week, the devil is in the details, and that could be the problem with a proposed basic income plan for the province, according to our next guest. We heard about the plan yesterday on the show. Larry Short is the Senior Investment Advisor with Short Financial here in St. John's. He believes a guaranteed basic income can be good in theory, but there are big challenges as well, particularly for this province. Larry joins us now. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. How are we doing?
Doing okay. How about you?
Good.
So let's start with the broad concept of guaranteed basic income. First thoughts, what do you think of it?
Well, we already have a version of this federally, of course, which is the Guaranteed Income Supplement for people who are age 65 and older who earn less than $18,000 in a run of a year. So it's, we already have a precedent for this being in existence. And the studies and discussion about this in the last number of years have been increasing, and it's clear. So, first of all, this report is beautifully written; it's really well put together, and I would suggest anyone who is putting together a proposal that they always put it in writing, because that allows for clear thought. And it's apparent that there's a lot of clear thought here. It doesn't mean that I agree with all of it, and there's a couple of areas in particular that I think that need some fine-tuning, particularly the question about who will pay for it. So there's two key elements here. One is the benefit, and the benefits are substantial, but the revenue is also a question.
There are a lot of questions. I mean, maybe I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. But I mean, just explain to us exactly how what we're talking about, like how this proposal is framed, like how it is different from some of the structures that already exist.
Yes. So some people could say, well, this basically is increasing welfare up to $22,000. And again, where this is coming from is, if I'm reading this right, and please, anyone listening, if I'm not, please correct me, but my understanding from reading the report is that $22,000 is considered to be the poverty line within the province, and anyone earning less than that would receive a guaranteed income from the government of that $22,000 figure. So an individual who's on welfare within the province would receive substantially less than that amount of money. So the first question is, well, isn't this just an increase in the welfare payments in order to bring people up to that poverty line level? Part of the discussion, I think, is the fact that there is a stigma attached to being on welfare, and there's a qualification that has to be done. You have to meet with a social worker, etc. Whereas this would be a guaranteed level that everybody in Canada would receive without having to go through that type of a means test.
Okay, so, there are, as you mentioned, a number of challenges specifically for this province. What stands out to you?
The calculation on the revenue options. It's on page 11 of the report, and it's talking about a 2% increase in income tax for the top two brackets would raise about $42 million per year. And I think we've just seen that provincially that was just done, and we were looking at about 15 million versus 42. And this is what I'm getting at, is that it looks like that the revenue figures in order to pay for such a very expansive system are off. So it always comes down to the magic question of who's going to pay for it. Now, that being said, I think they've really understated the economic benefit, the benefit of the entire economy, by putting money into the hands of the poor, because there has been some discussion about that in the paper, but I think they've really understated that, and that we've seen with the CERB payments that have gone out in the last year in Canada, that when you put money into the hands of poor people, they spend it, and that stimulates the economy rather dramatically. And I think that in the report, they've understated the net effect of that. So, again, the benefit of having something in writing is that you can actually get into the details and see where maybe parts of the report need to be beefed up. Versus the other elements that may be wanting. The other part that's not in here, and I've done a little bit of work on this because I find this area fascinating, is the results of the Ontario experiment. So Ontario went through this in a pilot project 2017-2019, and it was interrupted. It was brought in by a Liberal government and then halted by the current Conservative government. And when they went back, people went back afterwards to speak with individuals who had participated in the plan. The effect on the individual was absolutely extraordinary in many cases.
What happened?
Well, in some cases, people really turned around their lives. They really were able to move away from being, living paycheck to paycheck in order to go back into training and really make a significant difference in their outlook. Their things like the visits to mental institutions, etc., declined substantially. So this is what I'm saying, is that the benefits of this are very, very high. The cost is very high, and it really gets into then the question of what type of a society that we wish to have in the future. That's moving away from the pure economics of it, although the economics have to be reviewed, in order to see how we pay for it, right? So for example, in the revenue options, it was talking about other things like the luxury tax or taxing capital gains, where we're going to see that more than likely anyway with the upcoming federal budget. So, we're going through an election in the fall. We just had the cozy budget that generally happens before an election. Then we'll have the election in the fall, more than likely. Then we'll have more than likely an increase in capital gains taxes arising next February, March federally. So coming back to, again, the two key points is the benefits in many cases, I think, are huge. The costs are very definitely there. The source of funding is a question, and the overall impact on the economy is really substantial as well.
Well, and picking up on the cost, I think the takeaway from some of the representatives that we heard from yesterday from the Basic Income Working Group is that the cost isn't going to. Well, they say it's not going to cost society more because, given what we spend on healthcare, prison, children living in poverty, they believe that it would be a different way to treat that cost. Know, I mean, is that the case? Would things balance out here?
Well, that I don't know. So, and that's what I'm saying is that there's definitely more work to be done because, again, as I was saying, I think they've understated the impact of putting money in the hands of the poor, and the reason that, I mean, you can see it around this province, around this city, that the CERB payments, by putting cash in the hands of people who otherwise may not have had any, has a dramatic impact on the economy, and it's called a multiplier effect. And it's not the case of $1 going in the hands of a certain of people who tend to spend as opposed to save money. That the impact in what these people purchase, and then that really trickles up, if I could use that term, through the entire economy. So I definitely think that there's more work to be done on this, but it really gets into, again, the question of what type of society that we wish to have. And if you're looking out 10, 15 years, which is generally how one should be looking out whenever you're doing any form of planning, but certainly this type of planning, there's another revolution coming, which is the robotics revolution. That companies are eagerly building artificial intelligence robots in order to take care of many of the jobs that individuals who this appeals to, that this would help, would normally take on. So the unskilled labor is the group that do not necessarily have the opportunities to be able to have a significant living wage. And if they're going to be replaced, if the janitors of the world and the people who are serving at McDonald's and Burger King, etc., are going to be replaced by robots, then you're going to have a group in society of unskilled workers that you need to deal with anyway. So how is it that we allow them to have some form of living that is above the poverty line? All right. So it's an issue that's going to be coming anyway. It's a question of how do we address it as a society, and I certainly think that further and more in-depth discussion of this type of report is certainly deserving.
Larry, always appreciate your thoughts. And yeah, we're going to have more conversations about this. I got a funny feeling.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
That's Larry Short, Senior Investment Advisor with Short Financial here in St. John's.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.